Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening to our friends joining from Israel. My name is Chen. I'm the Manager of Communications here at ELEM USA. And thank you for choosing to spend the next hour with us talking about a really important subject on this International Women's Day. We will be talking about the very vulnerable demographic of young mothers at risk. We'll hear from friends. I will let people more acclaimed than me introduce them soon enough, but I'll just want to say first a few words about ELEM and a few words about Covenant House. And thank you for joining us, Covenant House. ELEM is a household name in Israel. It's the biggest nonprofit in Israel for young people and youth at risk. We are working in over 40 cities in Israel with more than 80 programs. We're serving the entire risk spectrum. So, on the one hand, you have youth who suffer from social anxiety, from risk of dropping out of school, all the way to the extreme end of the spectrum, youth in prostitution, homeless youth, some very rough stuff. And we're apolitical, working without judgment with all backgrounds, Muslim youth, Christian youth, Jewish youth, LGBTQ youth, Orthodox youth, you name it. And that's a very quick introduction of what we do. We work on the streets, we have shelters, we have drop-in centers. And today we will be focusing on our program for young mothers at risk, which is part of our field and independent living employment. So that's us. Covenant House, if you live in the US, I'm sure you've heard of Covenant House, which works with homeless youth and young people all across the country, including one branch in Mexico, I believe, but I'll again let our friends from Covenant House expand on that later. They have programs specifically for young mothers, in addition, helping with housing, and I will let the reps from there introduce themselves soon and tell you more about it. So without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful moderator for today, Tony and Emmy Award nominee, Tovah Feldshuh. She's also an author, wrote the book Lilyville, Mother, Daughter, and Other Roles I Played. This is a book about her relationship with her mother, so also quite relevant today. We will be taking your questions. So throughout this hour, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We will get to them later. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand it over to Tovah. Thank you for joining us, Tovah. And go ahead, the floor is yours.
My pleasure, and it is wonderful to be part of International Women's Day, since we're pretty international now. Avigail Sivan is talking to us from the Eretz, as they would say, from Eretz Yisrael, from the Holy Land, from Israel. I'm talking to you from Boca Raton, Florida, where I'm on a concert tour. And I believe our dear friend Shakeerah Riggins, Associate Director of Housing at Covenant House, is talking to us from New Jersey. Are you, my darling? Talking to us from New Jersey, Shakeerah?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. Probably Newark, which is one of the centers for Covenant House. I'm actually going to I'm going to let Avigail Sivan speak about her program and the specifics, followed by Shakeerah. However, to quote the great Chen Drachman, who has organized all this, it is worth remembering that Covenant House provides housing solutions to young mothers, while ELEM's program is within the community. It is part of ELEM's field for employment and independent living, helping with the exhaustion of rights, job opportunities, I think, rather than the exhaustion, the taking advantage of all rights and job opportunities. So take it away, Avigail. Talk to us specifically about your program.
So I'm going to say good evening, but it's actually good afternoon to all of you guys, and you're welcome to eat lunch. It's like 12 p.m. You're probably hungry, so don't be shy, you Americans. I'm Avigail. I'm a social worker, and I'm the founder and manager of ELEM's Israel Young Mothers at Risk program. It's a program that we've founded in the past year and a half here in Israel, trying to tend to the needs of this special community, special population, which today in the current social environment in Israel is like in a drop between all the chairs, and they're just not getting their rights or their privileges, and they can't move on from their unique status. Our audience is about between 2,000 to 10,000 young women, young mothers at risk between the ages of 16 to 26, which we understand that live in Israel and don't have the needs to realize their potential as young persons, and especially coming from at-risk situation from one end, and as young parents from the other end. So we founded our program, and sorry, Tova, did you want to say something? And our program consists of three parts. Our main part is an assistant living in the community program, which is an outreach program that tries to get to the mothers, to build a therapeutic bond with them, to build their trust back in the world and in themselves, and help them to make the way to independence in all means possible. We help with employment, we help with education, we help with realization of rights, we help them in the passage of getting to know themselves as adults, since they're in their late adolescence, and a lot of times that's really confusing, being in your late adolescence and a mother. We understand that being a mother is a choice they made, and most of them, since Israel has quite good services for abortions, and most of them choose to be mothers from that point of being at risk youth, of not having a home, of not having someone of their own to tend to, and of wanting to change their world and to change their life and to have something worth fighting for, because being so traumatized, a lot of times they don't have the power to do that for themselves without another cause. So we understand that there's a huge potential in this choice that they make in becoming young mothers, and we want to create a social environment that can help them realize that potential. So that's our main program we've been running for the past year. We were founded during the Corona, so it's really interesting to be a social program being founded in the Corona times. And we now have about 45 to 50 young women being escorted in their lives. Our second dimension is a coalition that we founded in order to change policy and government and to give them rights that they don't have today. And our third is just building this practice, understanding that the intersection between being a young person at risk and being a mother or a father is really unique. And we have, as workers, we have to build our practice rights and build our services and understand what that means. And so that's our third section, which is a bit theoretic, but we base it on our day-to-day services and experiences. And actually, just this morning, we had a beautiful meeting with young mothers at risk in one of our with one of our partners, which is HP Indigo company, which is a really big company. And we came to their facilities and just had like a gathering of workers from HP and the young mothers, and it was just amazing. So that's the kind of things we do. And I'm sorry for my English. I know it's good for an Israeli, but still, I'll probably, like, you know, I get stuck. And this is my son. He really loves the camera.
That's great. How old is your son?
7.5.
Wow, terrific. Shakeerah Riggins, Associate Director of Housing at Covenant House, New Jersey. Tell us specifically, in specifics, what you do and how you serve the community, and really my community, since I'm a New Yorker, so I'm sure you're active in more than just New Jersey. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Shakeerah Riggins. I'm the Associate Director of Housing for Covenant House. Covenant House serves young people between the ages of 18 up to 24 years of age. My role particularly is I found housing for our young people is either through Section 8, affordable rent, vouchers, which consist of like our emergency housing vouchers, our mainstream vouchers that we get from the state or the county. It could be our rapid rehousing, which is rental assistance for young people, to assist them basically for 2 years in an apartment until they get steady. Just to backtrack just a little bit, we have like 3 transitional living programs that I help with. One of them is Nancy's Place, which is located in Montclair, and we can house 8 people there. That house is really for young people whose main focus is on their mental health. And then we have our other site, which is in North Newark, which is our rites of passage, and it can house 14 young people, and that's for people who crisis has been stabilized, and they can either work full-time, part-time. Then we have our main site, which is in Newark on Washington Street, and that's really the hub of where our young people come from. We can house 35 young people here, separated, of course, male floor, female floor, and the one I'm most excited to talk about is our Raphael's Lifehouse, which is our Moms and Babes program, and we can house 12 young people there. There we assist them with finding employment, housing, getting on social services, which is our welfare system out here, where they can get food stamps and cash to help them balance out a little of their work life, or try to work life with being a mother. We also offer behavioral health services to them, legal services, anything basically that they need assistance with, we're there for them.
Myself, there we go. Fantastic. Shakeerah, since you're up at bat at the moment, also share with us some of the stories that you face to overcome the COVID crisis in relationship to government laws, and what you're doing to try to keep Covenant House operating at its top level despite the pandemic.
So we do get funding from the government, and everyone knows once you get funding from the government that, you know, there's criteria you have to meet. So we are in the process of meeting that criteria for we can still get funding to house our young people, because we don't want to see them out on the street. Some of the things we did change as far as someone coming in, that before we used to wait till you pass your first trimester, where it's like the safe zone, the doctors would say. But now we're waiting to get, we still cautious, but you know, we're still there for them. We also take young people who are pregnant with twins. Before it was, if you're pregnant with twins, you could come in, but after you give birth, it's a little iffy because we don't know the weight, we don't know like what's going on with them. And if they're under the age of 2, you also could come in, but we need to make sure that, again, as far as where we get money from, that we are meeting the criteria they have set for us, but also be willing to help you out. We're not just gonna just say, no, we can't help you. We're gonna do our best to help you as best we can.
What happens to the women after the 18 months, Shakeerah?
So as I mentioned earlier, some of our young people do find housing. We have some that found housing through Newark Housing Authority. It just depends on the county we look in for them. Some of them do have rental assistance that I mentioned, our rapid rehousing, for like 2 years. Some of them go back home to their family. We find that after they give birth, their parents are more open to having them come back, because it's like, here's their grandchild. They don't want them raised in a shelter. So, hey, come back home. And then some of our young people wind up with their significant others moving into an apartment or in a roommate situation with someone in their family.
Wonderful. Avigail, do you have someone advocating for you in the Knesset? Do you have lawmakers? I'm sure there must be somebody who is helping you trying to change policies for rights in Israel?
It's you, Tovah. We actually just had a really amazing breakthrough, which we hope that will lead to better things. Meir Cohen, the Israeli welfare minister, just actually called me about 2 months ago. We had I appeared in an article in the newspaper and he read it. And he just called me on like a Saturday night and told me, Abigail, this is Meir Cohen. I thought somebody was kidding. and he asked to meet and to talk about and the reality of young mothers at risk in Israel and what we can do. So we actually had this meeting a month ago, and we're now going into this process of trying to figure out a governmental program, because we're not government funded today, and there's not really an acknowledgement of their special needs in any like in housing and welfare and education. They just don't get what they need in order to catch their potential. So Meir Cohen is, I think, a huge deal, and we hope so. And we're trying to build up power with other MCs, but it's like in the beginning, and once a minister reach out to you, so it's also like a political question of how do you create like a coalition which is wide and he can still lead. It's like, but we're now really hoping to get into a process of acknowledgement and growth.
Wonderful. Avigail and Shakeerah, I want you to think before the end of the session, and I am motivating this question. This has nothing to do with Chen, because this isn't a fundraiser, but I personally want to know where we can send money to your Covenant House and to ELEM. I mean, even if it's my darling sharers in this wonderful Young Mothers at Risk hour, even if it's $18, even if it's $180, any configuration of chai, which of course for us means life, I personally wouldn't feel complete without giving something to save a mother and to save a child and to try to create a quality of life. When we come from a traditional, a Jewish background, where to lose a life is to lose a universe. It's to lose a universe. So these two women are in the life-saving business like any emergency room medicine doctor. They're in the front lines. All I do is play Leona Helmsley and Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Ruth Westheimer. I'm just a transformational actor. I'm not sitting there trying to make sure that a mother doesn't drug out or screw up her life and screw up her baby's life. So please make sure in the chat that I know where to donate to these two causes. Now, Shakeerah, my question, what is, and it's completely, I wrote a memoir called Lilyville, and they say in a memoir, since it comes from your memory, it could be whatever you choose. What would you say is your greatest success story during your time at Covenant House? Not you personally, but for the program. Yeah, right. I got the man of my dreams. I have a fabulous boyfriend. No, for the organization.
It is so, to be honest, it is so many. It's the little things that, helping a young person as far as getting an ID that they never had before, right? Or can't get it from their parents because their parents is holding it hostage, to someone getting their own place. To me, the ultimate goal is like getting their own place, being settled, being able to be a mom, not having to worry about where they're going to lay their head next, right? Like not on the street. So it's really, once our young girls, they're able to set a goal, meet their goal, and they make it. That's an accomplishment to me. That's what I'm most proud of. Any goal they set and they make it, even if it's the little things, I'm very proud of them.
Wonderful. Always remember, if somebody has a cell phone, the free Headspace apps that we all have. One is, I listened to one today on self-esteem, on being kind to yourself. I think the hardest thing about growing older is that, one, you have to be very kind to yourself because you make errors that you never made before. But that is wonderful. Have you had any interaction with Senator Cory Booker?
He has came here to our site before. He's met with one of my coworkers, Jeanette Scrozo. So she works in development here, so she's met with them before. I've seen him in passing, but
Well, I have a relationship with him. I can't say we're close friends, and we're very, very fond acquaintances. So I will reach out to him, and I will mention that I've been with you, and let's see if we can get him there again, because you never know. You never know.
Thank you.
My dear, amazing Avigail, what would you say is your greatest success story so far with your program?
Actually, time Shakeerah was answering to half listen, half write my successes. First of all, I think that each one of the 45 young women that we escort today is a huge success because these young women usually use that they lose trust in the world and in themselves and in social services. And in Israel, especially, they try to keep on a low radar because they're really afraid the social services have a really bad name for taking children.
Oh
So
my God.
they say, and it's not true, by the way. It's like it's not true. It's a stereotype,
Yeah.
but um, but they really feel alone in the world. So our biggest success is just being able to connect with them and to start the healing process. I can also say like two other things that I'm really proud of is our OJT. We just started an on-the-job training program with HB Indigo for two young mothers at risk, which are really low-skilled, under-professionalized, undereducated. Most of our young mothers are, and they just accepted them to work, and they actually their wages is way above minimum, and they learn while being paid in order to be like technicians in the lab. So that's really, really also, I think, something unique that we hope to achieve in every place we go to, those partnerships between the business world and the NGOs. And the third thing, because I can't say just one thing, is our trauma awareness birth program. Like most of our young women have been traumatized. They suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, all of the times from complex PTSD. And we understand that giving birth is a very, it can be a very traumatic experience. So we have like this program that they can choose. We try to help them to choose, or like they don't choose it enough, but for whom for the ladies that do choose it, it's an amazing experience to have a professionalized doula. Do you say doula in the States? Is it
Yes.
doula? So they have a professionalized doula that is specifically like trained for trauma awareness, birthing, giving birth, and they get escorted during the childbirth. And we know that this is a crucial point for their bond with their child, for the story about themselves. The birthing process has a huge healing potential. So I think that's another thing that I'm really proud of.
Wonderful. What is the relationship between these mothers and the IDF? Does the pregnancy usually happen before their service in the army?
Most of them don't get listed either because they're pregnant while they're 18. A lot of times in Israel, we do have like a civil service, but a lot of times they don't get that into the civil service as well. Although it can be open until you're 22, and that's actually one of our goals, is to get more mothers at risk into the civil service, because the army that just doesn't take them in. But most of them don't go through the army, and that's actually a huge barrier, because in the army service in Israel is just one of your ways to close the social gaps. A lot of times the army is a huge potential in Israel to close gaps and to socialize, and they lose it. And it's actually also a barrier in a lot of workplaces, because if you're not like an army or civil service graduate, then you don't qualify. So most of them don't go into civil service.
Wow, got it.
I didn't know that. Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you, Abigail. Thanks.
I think of our band of brothers and the Marines and our military and our, in a way, bifurcated relationship toward the military. I give to the Wounded Soldiers Program. Of course, I love our boys, but certain policies the United States have followed has not been great. On the other hand, we are now losing the Ukraine, which is so horrific. And all I can think of is, had they joined NATO, this would have been a different story. Shakeerah, in your dreams, your visions, mine is to do 8 shows a week where I would play Golda, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Ruth Westheimer in 1 week. So a tourist could come to New York and see a Supreme Court justice, an Israeli prime minister, and the international sex therapist within 48 hours. That's my artistic dream. What is your dream for your next accomplishment in Covenant House?
A daycare center.
Nice.
a daycare center for our young mothers that work. So our young people don't have traditional work hours anymore. It's no more 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And I know some of us probably have went through that in our stages of our life. And it's sad when you have to pick like work, your kid, right? And they shouldn't have to do that. And they should be able to work, provide for their kids, but also make sure the baby is safe, right? In the daycare setting. I would love to have a daycare that's open 24 hours. And my mindset, as you said, 24 hours daycare for our young people that are working, that's
Wow.
not working those traditional hours. It's very hard for them, and they shouldn't have to choose. They shouldn't have to choose.
That's
Yeah.
a very innovative idea, this idea of 24 hours.
Yeah.
Do you have an accountant who loves you? Do you have somebody who loves Covenant House? You should get together with him, ask him for a budget. You need somebody or a great contractor. Just somebody with a kind heart, because we're all children. We all have mothers. That's why my whole memoir, they asked me to write a celebrity memoir. I said, I'm not such a celebrity. I'm local talent. I'm on Broadway, but I'm going to write about except for The Walking Dead. Thank you. I'm going to write about my relationship with my mother and my mother's relationship with me, because many of us, most of us are mothers, and we are all children of mothers. We came out of the body of another human being who gave us life. So somebody who can relate to that, that's the universal that ELEM has and Covenant House together, that this is about the birth of new Homo sapiens that can contribute to society.
Well, can I jump in for a second? I wanted to actually note something about our special connection to Covenant House, ELEM's special connection to Covenant House. Our COO, Leora, who's also on this conversation, of course, has given me her blessing to talk about her, was herself a young mother's at risk with Covenant House when she was younger, and with the assistance of Covenant House, she has a healthy young adult at home. And this is part of why we love Covenant House so much. Of course, it's not just the overlapping of our ideals, but it's also the fact that the person who nowadays runs the operations of our organization for Israeli at-risk youth and for Israeli mothers actually grew up with Covenant House in their past. So thank you guys at Covenant House. I think I don't want to give shout outs, but I believe the wonderful person who accompanied Leora to the delivery room is actually also on this chat. So hi, I'm not gonna name drop you in case you don't want to, but much love to Covenant House. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. As Shakeerah was talking about made us feel very sentimental.
Wonderful. I'm back to the person who's going to draw up a budget for you. You need a budget. You need to bring Shakeerah this idea, which is brilliant. I've never heard of a 24-hour, all I know is a 24-hour gym at all in New York. And it's great because people do have the night shift, and then the mother has to sleep, or you're just a ragamuffin. So we need to get a person who will sit with you and say, who's a contractor or a builder. This will cost this, this will cost this. So we know we're dealing with a $20 million project, a $10 million project, and then we can bring it into being. To produce Becoming Dr. Ruth off-Broadway is $799,000. That's what I know it is. So I need 16 people where $50,000 is a walk in the park, where it's nothing. I send $750 twice a year to New Guinea to educate my guides' children. For me, $750 twice a year, I don't even feel it. So we have to find those individuals for my little projects. But your project, you need to bring it into the physical universe. That's your next step, if I may jump in there. Avigail, what is your greatest future dream for ELEM?
First of all, expanding our program, because we're only philanthropic based. So we've started with 2 branches and now we're going to 4, but it's not we don't have whole positions, like 100% positions, and the need is much larger. Like our dream is to have at least 10 branches with people working full time, escorting and outreaching to these young women. That's one dream. The second dream, because I go in 3, the second dream is to start a father's program. Most of our young mothers at risk do have a father of their baby in their lives, either married, most of them aren't, but they are in a relationship. And those fathers are all at risk, young adults. Most of them are older than the mothers. Most of them are unemployed, in debt, a lot of times in drugs and violence, and they just don't have no one to work with them. And once you work with a single mother, the sky's the limit. But once you work with a mother that has a partner in her life, it's so much complex. And those fathers need to be escorted as well. They have to have their needs met in order for us to be able to reach the potential of the mothers and of the fathers. So my dream, my goal for 23 is to, except for growing and out branching, is to really start working with the fathers. I also really believe that it's the next feminist thing to do. I think that as long as we only work with women, especially in like traditional societies, a lot of times we do harm, because like the violence just escalates once they're empowered, but the men aren't. So that's the second thing. The third thing is having a program for living in the community, assisted living in the community with housing. With independent housing, we're not talking about shelters, although Israel needs that as well, and it's something that we're building towards in the nationwide sense and with other partners, because we don't want to do everything. And then but it's having these like little villages in cities with 3, 4, 5 independent apartments that the women can be in a similar surrounding and have each other's backs, and just create a community of women together and a community around them that can support them and be like the family they don't have. So that's our 3 goals for the next year.
Fabulous. Thank you. We're about to open up for questions, but I just want to say there was a famous Supreme Court case when RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was still a defense attorney, and a brilliant one, the only one to make 2 law reviews, one at Harvard, one at Columbia, and graduate first in her class. In all events, as she has said to me personally before she died, and may her memory be a blessing, do you know what it was like to try to teach 9 men that gender equality existed? We could not succeed, and then I had to defend a father who was not given equal rights under the laws of the United States for benefits as the single principal parent to an infant because his wife died in childbirth. And he sued, and Ruth took the case, and he won. So gender equality in the United States began through the liberation of a man. And so I acknowledge you with that miraculous idea, and yours, Shakeerah, with the 24-hour daycare center, which is completely attainable. We got to, you got to see the building. Golda Meir, when she was prime minister, she said her favorite job in the government was Minister of Housing, because she could see the bricks, built here, built here, built here. And Avigail, as you must know, Golda Meir in the United States is right next to Abraham Lincoln. It's like, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Golda Meir. For you guys, it's a little more problematic, but for us, she's way up there in the divine Gan Eden and Garden of Eden.
Actually, didn't know that, so it's good to know. Maybe we'll call our project the Golda Project.
I don't know. I'd love to come and do the play there, but so far I haven't been invited to do the play there. Okay. And she was even from Milwaukee after Pinsk and Kiev. Let us take questions. Are there questions? I can't see the chat.
Yeah, we have one coming from Lori. Lori, do you actually want to unmute yourself and ask? You're welcome to if you want to. Is he here? I don't know. Oh, okay. I'll ask for you, Lori. That's okay. Oh, there you are.
Hi, I'm Lori Gossett, Vice President of ELEM in the US, and Tovah, you rock. Your energy and your conversation and your smart questions having you here, it really brought the event to another level. So thank you. I think we need to have you moderate all of our events. You were great. Thank you. My question is, we know that youth who are young women who are mothers, they need support. But young mothers who are at risk, there's a whole other constellation of problems because they're at risk youth who happen to be pregnant. Can both of you talk a little bit about what that adds to the equation and how difficult it is to help these young women and sometimes girls, and why they fall through the cracks? A lot of them don't get services, they don't get support because they're not young women at risk, and they're not just young mothers. So what are the challenges and how do you meet them?
Abigail, do you want to go first?
I actually wanted Shakeerah to go first, but I can go. I was waiting for Shakeerah.
I
Let
can go.
Shakeerah, let Shakeerah go first. Go, girl.
Yeah.
Go,
So
Shakeerah.
what, that's twofold. I think that's like a real complicated answer. There's no one straight answer because every young mother is different. What I find is that a lot of our, I'm gonna say girls, females, or a lot of our girls, they have this notion of, some of them, not all, that them having a baby would like, it will be different. It's like a comfort for them, right? They didn't get something from home, and so they want to do something different with the baby. They want to make sure that whatever I didn't get, I'm going to give it to my baby. A lot of them, I hate, this is going to sound cliche, a lot of them don't know what they're getting into at such a young age and being a mother. It is so, I know a lot of you know, it's like, it's really time consuming. And our young people, they're personally, I don't know if they're there mentally to be able to understand that once you give birth, you just can't put them to the side and say like, okay, I get to it later. No, you don't get to them later. They need your attention 24 hours. And to be at risk of not having a place to stay, not knowing where your next meal is coming from, it is very hard for them. It's almost like they do whatever they can do in that moment to survive, and some of it is not healthy at all, not healthy. So we have to like build them up from that unhealthy, I'm going to say, relationship mindset that they have, to get it where they're okay with some of the choices they made. And it's okay because at that moment, that was the right decision for you. But let's look beyond that. Let's not keep making the same choices over and over, because there's something that can be done differently. And we're here to help you do that. Some of them want their parents or someone significant in their life. And unfortunately, sometimes they're not ready to be in their lives right now, but it's okay. You have us. We're going to do as much as we can for you. Whatever it is you want, we're there for you. And try to get them in that mindset to know, like, we're not here to harm you. We're not like the rest of them. It's difficult. It is very difficult because of what they've seen growing up, what they have experienced over and over again. So we try to build that trust in them, knowing that this is a place, this is a safe haven for you. So whatever happens here, we're here for you and your baby.
I have a
I hope
question.
that answer your question, Lori. Sorry.
You're doing great. Do you have psychologists on staff? Do you have access to therapists?
Yes, we do have therapists here. We have 2 on site. And they meet with the girls. The young ladies are there if you want to meet with them weekly, if you want to meet with them. It just really depends on the individual. Some of our girls at the beginning, they don't want to meet with our therapists because it's taboo. A lot of the young ladies we service are African American, and so it's like taboo. You don't tell them your business, right? Because you just don't. and trying to get them open to the therapist is like, they're there for you. Whatever you say is between you and that therapist. They're there to help you to get to that next stage.
Are the therapists African American? Are some of the therapists?
Yeah, we have one African American and one Caucasian.
Right. Call the Jewish Family Service. We may get lucky. The Ethiopian Jews, besides being gorgeous, happen to be people of color. And who knows? Maybe one of them is a therapist. I don't know. Or I'm just trying to think of diversity, because I think they're also afraid that they've broken the law, that if they can't tell the therapist whatever drug-related things there are, and somehow they have to be under a protexia, that there's a fiduciary relationship, that nothing leaves the therapy room and they can't.
But a lot of times they also grew up in the system, and something about growing up in the system builds like these barriers in getting help. Like a lot of our, at least for 40% of our young mothers at risk suffer from complex PTSD, but they don't get neither therapeutic help or psychiatric help. Not because they can't. They can. We can escort them to get that, but that because they choose, they're afraid. They don't want to be the young person they were that was a lot of times made to take drugs even though they didn't want to, and drugs like psychiatric treatment. So we have like these barriers of the childhood that a lot of times sorry, and that a lot of times prevent them from getting the help they need. And that's like one of our challenges, to help them take the trust that they build to us, with us, and to just take that trust and show them that you can trust other people. Because I think that as a young person at risk, you can go through the life without trusting. You can, live in squats and be like on the margins of society without trusting and without meeting the government. But once you're a parent, once you're pregnant, you have to go to the doctor. Once you're a parent, you have to go. In Israel, it's like once you're 3-year-old, you have to go into kindergarten. It's a law. So once you're a parent, you have to meet the authorities. And if you can't start to trust the authorities, to trust other people, it's just life in hell, because you're in a constant conflict. So I think that really, like, a lot of times we battle with the demons of the past, and most of our young mothers at risk are second and third generation to poverty and exclusion. And poverty and exclusion by themselves are related to trauma. So a lot of what we do is to try and break the chain, which is really hard to break, especially when you live in a neoliberal like atmosphere, when you have to survive, and if you're not strong enough, you fall between the cracks.
So what we find is, like, a lot of our young girls who have been in the system with child protective services over this way, that you don't tell, because they get involved in your life and they're going to scrutinize every little thing, right? So now I get pregnant, or you're going to be in my child's life now, right? So you don't really say anything. You don't really talk, because I don't want you in my life. I remember growing up in the system, so I know what happens, right? And so that plays a big part. Like you said, it really does play a part in how they communicate and who they trust. You are absolutely right, Abigail.
They're just so alone, because when I gave birth to this one, to the annoying one that I think just went now, my first child, I had this huge crisis, because becoming a mother, like, it breaks you, or at least it broke me and built me. And when I had my second child, it also broke me and built me, because that's the kind of thing that happens to you when you give life and you give birth, and they're so alone in it, and I can't imagine it. Like, I think that one of my motives for this program is really that place of helping other young women acknowledge the fact that first, they don't have to be alone. It's okay to trust. You can, and everything you're going through is normal, and acknowledging the ambivalence, because who of you who's a parent, like being a parent a lot of time is ambivalent, especially to toddlers that are time consuming and you don't sleep and it's hard. And once you really, really want to do it on your own, you just have these parts that you can't acknowledge. And I think, and then you're more violent, and then you're more depressed, and it's like this cycle. Like when I had my first child, I was running a place for young people, young girls at risk, and some of them were mothers. And I was like all over the place. I came back to work, and I met with the young mothers, and they were okay. So I went to my psychologist because I'm privileged and I have a psychologist, and I told her, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, if they can handle it, why can't I? And one of the things I realized at that point is the privilege I have to feel the range of feelings, which is being a mother, to feel the anger, to feel the frustration, to feel the pain and the hurt. And a lot of times our young mothers are in such survival mode that they can't feel that. And if you can't feel that, you can't heal it. So I think that a lot of our process is to help them feel the pain in a controlled and loving environment and build from it, because that's one of the keys to breaking the chain.
Holy wick. Such a privilege to be with both of you. I don't even know. Yeah, right. To be with both of you. There is a brilliant therapist. Her name is Dr. Edith Eger. Write it down, Eger. She wrote 2 books. She specializes in PTSD. She wrote 2 books. One is called The Choice, which I had the honor of narrating for Audible. The other is called The Gift, which I had the honor of narrating for Audible. The first one won the National Jewish Book Award as the #1 book in the nation. The second one, I won the Audio Award for Best Narration. But if it's not on the page, it won't be on the stage, as we say. I mean, the woman is brilliant. She was a victim of the Holocaust. I will give you just a brief 30-second moment there's a lot of vacuuming going on outside my room. She was a victim of the Holocaust. They were walking into Auschwitz. The guy who sorted out the Jews was there. I guess it was Mengele. Was there. And she went with her mother, and the 2 daughters and the mother had hooked arms. It was winter. They were in their winter coats. The mother said to Edie, who was 13, stand up tall, look older. It may be to your benefit. Look older. Do not tell, because you're 13, say that you're 16. And the mother is beautiful, and her sister was older, so that was cool. And Mengele says to the 3 women, you're all so beautiful, and pointing to the mother, is that your mother, or is that your sister? And little Edie, just barely 13, said, oh, that's my mommy. And he said, thank you so much. Mrs., he said to the mother, you go to the left, and children, you go to the right. You'll see your mother soon. So basically, she had the trauma of sending her mother to her death in Auschwitz-Birkenau during the war. Now, had she lied and said, this is my sister, maybe her mother would have lasted another day, maybe another 3 days, maybe the war. So that's what she lived with. Her life was saved because she was a great ballerina and a gymnast. And Mengele heard she was a great ballerina. He came into their Arschlag, into their bunker, and said, dance for me. And she pretended she was still in Hungary and saw the Hungarian symphony playing for her. And she shut her eyes and she danced for Mengele. And she made it through the war. Anyway, to say that she was a wreck after the war, So she became a PTSD, she got her doctorate, specialist for the American soldiers coming back from Korea and Vietnam, and has reconstructed lives. And these books, which are on Audible, if people are not reading, are worth at least listening to, because it's somebody who made something of her life. This is like Ruth Weston. They made something of their life. The other thing I would suggest, and I don't know if it applies to Israel, but this woman is Jewish. I've been surrounding myself with people who have longevity. People like, I know this sounds crazy, Tom Brady, our greatest, he's called the GOAT, greatest of all time. It's not Foreman, whatever it is. The guy in football who throws.
Football.
No, it's not foot.
They're looking for quarterback.
Patriots.
Thank you.
No?
The greatest quarterback. That's right. That
Oh.
was his position. The greatest quarterback of all time. Well, he had a career from 22 to 44, or 20 to 44, 22 to 44 after he graduated from University of Michigan. And how does he have the longevity? He came from the same undistinguished background we all came from. You know, whether he was on his scooter or hanging from a swing. I don't think he had the disadvantage of being born in a ghetto. But there are people who are winners, who are heroes. I know that Israel, of course, is riddled with them, just riddled with heroes, because the obstacles for survival are so great. But that's what I would suggest. Certainly Edith Eger, she also has a website. She has YouTubes. And man, she turns a pig's ear, what do they say, into a silk purse. They say they turn a sow's ear into a silk purse. It's a person who makes everything good. When Ruth Westheimer calls me in the morning because she wants this play so badly to go to Off-Broadway, she goes, Tovah, I want the news, only the good news. Tovah, tell me, you're brilliant. So she empowers me. She says, you're brilliant. I may not be brilliant, but she empowers me to go forth in the world to help deliver this play. And she says, I want the news, only the good news. So somehow, maybe the infusion of positive energy, and then the trust thing is a tough one. The trust one I have to leave up to you. Edith meets with these individuals one-on-one, and one of them pulled a knife on her. I mean, you know, it's in the book. And of course, she survived. She had to talk him down and talk him down. And that was the breakthrough. She doesn't let weapons in the room. I don't know how that happened. So talk about being at risk. And she said what Avigail said. The only way she could heal was to get the stuff up and out. And eventually she was invited to speak in Germany. And she forced herself. She went back to Auschwitz in Poland. And that's where she remembered the incident. She had buried the incident. And she got well. Do we have one or two more questions, or we're going to wrap this up?
Yes, we have two more questions, and then we'll let you guys enjoy the rest of International Women's Day. So Miriam, I don't know if you want to go on or just let me ask. No? Okay, I'll ask. I imagine that some of your clients, well, we don't refer to, well, we call them, you know, not clients, but yes, are victims of rape. How do you help them? Avigail, do you want to take it first this time around?
A lot of the young women at risk we help are victims of rape of all kinds, and a lot of times it's like of continuing sexual abuse. One way to help them is to do the trauma awareness, to create trauma awareness programs that have this part in them. And that's like a main aspect of our work with it, you know, traumatized people. There isn't a special recipe for working with survivors of rape, because as Shakeerah said before, each of the women is a whole world. And the method is just personalizing the envelopes of our treatment for them and trying to understand what are the keys for their healing. When we talk about, you know, the intersection of parenthood and trauma, then escorting the birth process is really important. Escorting the nursing process, because a lot of times breastfeeding can be really triggering. So that's another thing that we try to tend to with our young women. We try to help them realize what will be their triggers for dealing with being like a sexual abuse survivor. But if you refer to pregnancies and children being born out of rape, because of the laws in Israel and having abortions quite I forgot the word. I'm sorry.
What's the word?
It gets later. What did he say, Chen?
What word in Hebrew? Let me see if I can help here.
Like, we have good access to abortion. So a lot of the time, if the woman was lucky enough to find out that she's pregnant at the time, there's no problem for aborting. And even if you're from Masoti,
A more traditional background, religious.
traditional background, that you can do it very, very districtly, and and you don't have to have anyone know about it. So that's like a huge part, I think, of dealing with it. And if they choose to bring life, then we work with the ambivalence of raising the child of your attacker.
Well, Shakeerah, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I think Abigail summed it up. One thing I would say is that some of our young victims who are victims, sometimes they don't even acknowledge that they are victims, right? So we try to, let them know that, yes, something traumatic has happened to you. What can we do to assist you, right? Because a lot of times we have to take our cues from them. Even though we want to jump in, do everything we can, we have to take our cues from them, because sometimes they're not even ready to acknowledge that something like this happened at all.
And you break their story, because once you
Yeah.
break the story, you like break their shield.
Yeah.
You can't
Right.
tell someone that was rape, because if
Yeah.
she's not ready to acknowledge it as rape. And I'll tell you another thing. If she doesn't, it's like being on the prostitution, being in prostitution today, we refer to it as a scale. And you can kiss someone in order for to get a cigarette. That's like being on the prostitution scale. But a lot of times, if that young person feels that that was an empowering moment for her, because we live in a society that teaches us from our younger ages that we use our body, and as women we learn to use our body as our advantage, and being so disadvantaged, a lot of times you'll find your advantages in places that can be gassed as like being on the prostitution scale. But if she doesn't get it as being on the prostitution scale, then that's a huge part of it. And a huge part of it is to hear her story and acknowledge and honor the way that she looks at her choices and work with that. I hope I was clear.
No, you're very clear. For the final question, it is from Noam Layden. Where are the men, the boys who help make these babies? Are they involved? This has partially been answered, but let's address it quickly and then call it a day. Where are the men? Where are the men for you, Shakeerah? Are often the women alone? Do they know who is the father?
Combination of a lot of things. Some of them know, some of them don't. Some of the fathers are in their lives and some not. Unfortunately, that's realistic. We do have some fathers that are there, like come to their kids in their life, do everything they can. We got some that know their fathers, but they're not there. And then we got some who basically don't know who the father is. So.
Got it. Avigail?
For us, about 70% of the women in the program do have the father figure in their lives in this way or another. Like a small percentage are married, most of them not. And we do work for the men, but as long as we escort the young women, there's a center of our treatment of them. And that's why I want to have the father's program, because I believe that they have to have different figures for each other. And I also really believe in same-sex intervention. I think that most of the men really benefit from connecting to other men rather than women. So that's another part of it. But we do work with whoever surrounds the young mother, whether it's her partner, the baby's father, and he's not her partner, grandparents, and mother. A lot of times they live with their family, and their family itself is like this huge weight on their shoulders. So we try to work with everyone, but our main focus is the young mother, while everyone needs their focus. So
thank you. If you look at the chat, it's very, very easy if you care to donate. I say donate for your own level of humanity. Donate for yourself. Donate so you can hold your head up high and say, I'm a mensch. I'm a decent person. I'm a person who can connect. I'm a person who's empathic. I think watching the Ukraine, I mean, there's very little light around that, but of course it takes darkness to see the stars, as Martin Luther King said. But when you watch these volunteers coming from all over Europe to help, and the American people who are flying over there too, because they can't live with themselves if they couldn't. So this is a very small ask. I'm only asking you for money. I'm not asking you for your blood. www.elem.org donate, or if you go on www.elem and then you have a brain in your head, elem.org, and you go donate, you're gonna find the place to give. And then of course for Covenant House, it's support.covenanthouse NJ. NJ is important because that's Shakeerah's Covenant House. Support.covenanthousenj.org, and then go forgive, and you will find it. And that is today's program. Chen, would you like to say goodbye? How would you like to organize it? Yeah. Thank you from Tovah Feldshuh.
Thank you from Tovah Feldshuh. That's much appreciated. Thank you, Tovah. Thank you, Avigail. Thank you, Shakeerah, for joining us. You're all incredibly inspiring women. There are many, many ways to get involved with ELEM. As Tovah said, you can definitely go to elem.org and see. And we'd love to work with you, and we'd love to work with your communities. And I'm sure Covenant House would love to work with your communities too. So have a wonderful International Women's Day, everyone. And we hope to see you all again soon. Sign up to our mailing list and you'll hear about all we're up to.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.